There she is.
Hey, listen.
Hey. Hi.
Hi.
Hold on. I'm seeing all sorts of crazy ass shit. Hi.
Yeah. You're in the right place.
Oh my God, everyone's wearing a witch hat.
Well, it's Halloween.
No, I know Halloween, but I mean, had I been given the memo,
It's okay. You are Halloween. You are the queen of Halloween.
Yeah, that's what we hear.
Tell us about your Halloween bell book and candle show.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's our first virtual show. It's on the 30th because we figured everyone was going to be busy doing their own spells and rituals and things for Halloween. No, really, because Halloween is actually Samhain, which is the witch's New Year. Yeah. So, you know, like there's going to be a million like Dick Clark New Year's Eve type shit for witches going on that night. So we're doing a show called Blue Moon on the 30th, but it will stay up all week so everyone can watch it. And if you follow at Bell Book and Candle on Instagram, it's
tell us about your witchy burlesque, like what it is.
It is. It's an all occult burlesque show, and it's run by Shana Leilani and me, and it's been going since May 2017, and I'll tell you how it came about because this is just fucking batshit. Okay, so you know the movie Bell Book and Candle from 1958 with Kim Novak as like sort of a beatnik sorceress in Greenwich Village, and you know, she's seducing her neighbor Jimmy Stewart through love spells that she's working on him from like down the hall. And they had a club in there called the Zodiac Club. And I'd been watching this movie since I was little, and it was my favorite movie. So flash forward about 50 or so years. I had a dream about the movie, but it wasn't the movie. And this was in 2017. I'd finally stayed off the road from dancing, where I'd been on the road for like 15 years straight. Now everyone on earth is going to be texting me. I'm sorry. Because the memo just went out to the universe. Anyway, so I had this dream about it, but it wasn't just the cool beatnik Zodiac Club. It had all sorts of like witchy strippers in it, and it was like sort of updated and modern. And I was like, wow, this is like even better than the one in the movie. And then this girl called me and asked for burlesque lessons, but she wasn't calling me Pleasant. She was calling me Princess Farhana, which is my dance name. Yeah. And her name was kind of common, Shauna. So it didn't register that we knew each other already from the Green Man, like in a cult shop. Store. Yeah, where I work as a psychic now, but I didn't at the time, and where she was already working as a psychic. Wow. So she comes into the studio and we're like, oh, you know, and her number that she wanted to work on was like called Voodoo Housewife. And it was amazing. She took direction better than like so many dancers I've worked with. And then a couple of weeks later, she invited me to a birthday party that she was having. And it was in this little small dive bar in Northeast LA. And she wanted me to dance at it. So I was going to as a birthday present. But then there was a few psychics from the Green Man. And of course she was wasted because it was her birthday. Right. You know, like who would be? Right. But so there was some of the psychics from the Green Man. And I was like, wow, this is just like my dream. So I waited for her hangover to, you know, a couple of days for it to dissipate. And then I called her up and I said, you know, I had this idea for a show that came from a dream, and it was almost exactly like your birthday, but it was in a beautiful place with a raised stage. Do you want to be a co-producer? And she was like, immediately, yes. So we talked about it. And then I said, I haven't been in LA for so long because I've been on the road. I don't know what venues are like. Let's start going out and seeing if there's a quiet place for psychics and a raised stage, because I don't want us to just dance among the crowd or the chairs like so many burlesque shows do here. I don't have anything against that, but I saw like a production.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we started looking around, and every place either had like multiple rooms, but no stage. So there would have been a place for the psychics, but you know, you'd have to dance on the floor in the bar or something. And I kept thinking in my head of El Cid, which is a historic venue in Los Angeles.
And it's haunted.
It's haunted, yeah. But at that point, I had heard from so many people that since I'd been on the road, it had just fallen into disrepair. And I'd been doing shows there for like almost 30 years, you know, like since I very first started dancing, like dance shows, rock and roll shows, blah, blah. And so that was the place I kept thinking of because it had a beautiful patio. It's totally haunted. It's got mega history. Like in the 30s, it used to be called the Jail Cafe. And yeah. And there was bars on the windows, and all the waiters wore like all those. They wore all those like, oh brother, where art thou? Like striped jail jackets, and they'd be like, they'd be like serving like Clark Gable and like Betty Davis and all the top movie stars, like cocktails in tin cups, and like all the meals would just be flop on tin plates. It was like the hottest ticket in town.
That's amazing.
I know, and it had used to be a sound stage. It was a sound stage. It was, you know, and that was like in the days of silent films, and then it turned into a flamenco venue in like, I think it was 1958. Anyway, so and it has this gorgeous overgrown patio, and it's got so much LA history, and it's so haunted that some of the staff refuses to close it. And seriously, and the owners are like, oh, okay, you know, because everyone knows how fucking haunted it is. Anyway, so so I kept thinking about this, and then one day I woke up, and it was in my head. I'm just gonna say for the listeners, in case nobody knows what clairaudience is, it's when you get a voice in your head, not in a schizophrenic way, in a psychic way, in a paranormal way. So I woke up and there was this clairaudient voice screaming in my head, call Lena. You have to call Lena. Lena will know what to do about the show. Give Lena a call. Call Lena. And it was like nonstop. It was like OCD. And so Lena is Lena Licaro, who I've known since the 80s. She's a rock and roll writer. She's, you know, she's a DJ. She's put shows together. She's now the culture editor of the LA Weekly. But I hadn't talked to her in like 5 years because I was on the road. And this was like everybody in LA I practically hadn't talked to or seen because I was touring so much. So I looked up in my phone and I had what I thought was her number. And I was like, hey, if this is Lena still, give me a call. I need to run something by you. So the phone rang immediately. And we're catching up on 5 years worth of stuff. And then she goes, what did you want to talk to me about? And I said, I've got this idea for a show. And I told her the whole thing. And she's like, oh my God, that's fantastic. Where are you thinking of doing it? And I was like, well, I didn't want to tell her about the voice because I didn't realize she was witchy, right? I just knew her as a rock and roll person. So so I told her about the show and she's like, that's amazing. Where are you thinking of doing it? And I said, well, I keep coming back to one place, but that's what I thought you could help me with. And she's like, well, what place is that? And I said, El Cid. And the phone went dead silent. And then I was like, oh, shit, maybe it really is, maybe El Cid's really fucked up beyond maybe I'm an idiot to mention this. And I was like, do you not think that's a good idea? And she said, did anybody tell you I started booking it last night? And I was like, what? Yeah, I just got goosebumps. I get goosebumps every time I say that.
Wow.
Marina and I went to see you, and she won the grand prize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got that money basket, and I used it, and I got a job. So there you go.
Wow, that's so
used
cool.
to do a spell, and I burnt my candles, and I
Yes.
it was super cool. So thank you.
I
That
have
was
your book.
amazing. Hang on, say the show.
Okay, you're holding it upside down.
Uh-oh.
You're like Trump outside the church with the upside down Bible, right?
Yeah.
No, she's holding it upside down so Dracula can see it. when he's
Yeah.
Ah,
There you go.
that's an amazing story, Pleasant. So
Wait, I have to tell you one more thing about it that's just insane too. Okay, so I told her I wouldn't take it unless I got every third she gave me a date for 2 weeks from that date, and it just immediately sold out. And this was in the way pre-pandemic when it was hard to sell out shows. but I told her I wouldn't take that date until, unless I could have every third Wednesday that summer, because I thought I could turn it into something. And she said, I don't know if the owner will go for it. And I didn't know the owner, but it turns out I knew his father from the 80s. And so his father said, oh yeah, I'll give it to her. Then somehow, and this was not planned. I just wrote about all of this in my new book and other stuff, which I'll tell you about in a minute. This was not planned. So that show sold out. The second show was right on the day of summer solstice. And then that year we hit every dark moon, new moon, or solstice in the rest of the year. And people were like, how far in advance did you plan this? And I was like, oh, we just planned it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to like so it was just insane. It was just like a complete, it was nuts.
Now, Pleasant, we go way back to the LA punk scene.
Oh yeah.
And you were a couple years younger, but the thing that is the biggest memory for me from the beginning was hanging out at the Bel Air Sands.
Yeah.
With Blondie. Now I was messing around with Gary Valentine. But what were you doing?
Well, I was like, I was at the Bel Air Sands with because Paul Hofstetter lived there. K-Rock broadcasted out of the Bel Air Sands. K-Rock, which for a while was the biggest rock station in Los Angeles and all over the place. The Bel Air Sands was like, first of all, how do you have a pirate sort of radio station in a hotel in Bel Air?
Right.
God only knows how the fuck that happened. But they used to have shows there too. They had like Blondie and Venus and the Razor Blades and other shows. I was hanging out there. There used to be this band called The Quick, and some of the, of course you guys know, but just for anyone that's listening to this, The Quick, a couple of members went on to write and perform the theme song for Friends. But The Quick was founded by Steve Hofstetter, who was just amazing. And they were like the best power pop band ever. And if they would have been a couple of years later or earlier, they would have been humongous. But anyhow, so I was seeing his younger brother, who I met at the Sugar Shack, which was like a disco where you had to show ID to prove that you were under 21. Like the only people that could, it was where they discovered, it was where Kim Fowley discovered Cherie Curry and Vicky from Venus and the Razor Blades. It was in the Valley. It was like the next extension after Rodney's English Disco. So
yeah, I used to go there.
Oh, I know you did. I'm just telling all the people. Yeah, the Sugar Shack was wild. Everyone was like fucking underage and having juice at the bar and going out and drinking in cars and having sex in the alleys like constantly. And then all the mirrors, like the whole dance floor was mirrored, and Chucky Starr was the DJ, and there was a million kiss marks at mouth level, at somebody wearing platforms mouth level, where everyone would just like kiss the mirror doing Fox on the Run or Rebel or something.
But you remember hanging out with Blondie and the Bel Air Sands was under Chapter 11. We got everything for free.
Yes, no, I mean that whole thing was all the shit that was going on in those days was there was no fucking way in hell it would ever happen today. For the Bel Air Sands was like a great hotel scenario. Everything was just happening nuts. The radio station was there. You could open any drawer and Quaaludes would roll out. There was bands playing there. Everyone was like fucked up beyond belief. I never remember how we got there or got back. I mean, it wasn't like a lot of bus route. None of us had cars. And
was Jimmy Destry obsessed with Joan Jett or something?
Yeah. Okay, well, so Blondie was staying at the Tropicana motel in West Hollywood, which is now the Ramada Inn, but the Tropicana was like the LA answer to the Chelsea Hotel in New York. It was this amazing hotel, Duke's Restaurant, that's now on Sunset Boulevard next door to the Whiskey, used to be there. It was like under the parking lot of there. And Tom Waits and Chuck Weiss used to live there. There was all these bungalows in the back where bands could stay. And it was also doubled as a place for all the female hookers, because there weren't, Santa Monica Boulevard wasn't boys town that much at that point. There was a bunch of like female hookers. there. And so the Tropicana used to do the shorts, which was like the hour-long room rental. And they do the shorts and like just let bands, you know, stay there all the time, no matter what happened to the rooms. But nobody wanted to trash the rooms because the rooms all looked like, it looked like if James Brown and your weird grandma from Tennessee had decorated a room for a porn video. There was like marbleized mirrors, and some of them had mirrors on the ceiling, and some of them had shag carpeting, and some of them had indoor-outdoor carpeting. And it was like a fucking key party, no matter who was there, because the swimming pool, which was painted black because they had thrown so much, everybody had thrown so much lawn furniture in it, there was rust marks going, so, you know, going all through the pool. So they painted it black. Everyone used to call it the Black Lagoon. And you had to be careful if you got in there, A, because you might get hepatitis, but B, because if you jumped in, you might hit an upside down chaise lounge or something, you know?
If you sit on the couch, you could get crabs.
Well, you couldn't get crabs in the pool, but if it would have been around longer, they would have mutated longer into like an aquatic kind of crabs. Like, but anyhow, yeah. So what, like Blondie would be staying there. The Cramps stayed in room 100A for months. The Mumps from New York was staying in a bungalow. And the pool parties were nuts. There'd be multiple bands there. One time, I can't even remember who I was just telling this story to, but one time on my sweet 16th birthday, which I think was actually my 18th or 19th birthday, but sweet 16 looked better on the paper flyer. Lee Black Childers, they worked for Main Man and David Bowie and you know, like a million people, and was a really famous rock photographer. He brought Marianne Faithfull, you know, because he was staying there too. He had Marianne Faithfull there, and I had just discovered cigarette loads. You know what those are? They're these little exploding things. So me and my fanzine lobotomy co-editor, Randy, like I'd gotten them at the Magic Store on Hollywood Boulevard, and we spent ages on speed, like picking out the tobacco with like a paper clip, and then shoving cigarette loads down in there, and then putting more tobacco and then cigarette loads. And so I thought I had this system worked out where I, you know, would have certain cigarettes upside down in my cigarette pack, you know, and those were like the load ones. But then I took Quaaludes, and I completely forgot the system. And I think I might have taken acid too, and I was already drunk. So Marianne Faithfull was like nodding out on the chaise lounge right by the pool, and she looks up at one point, does anybody have a cigarette? You know? I was like, sure, here, have one of these, and like lit it for her. And,
Oh no!
Oh no!
And then it was one of the ones that had like 3 or 4 loads in it, and so she was like holding it in her hand, and the ash was getting this long, and then it would like explode, and she'd like wake up and then nod out again. And then I was like going out with Levi from Levi and the Rockettes, who I later wound up marrying for a little while. But
I think at your house in Disgraceland, were you married to Levi at the time? I remember, I guess.
Yeah, at Disgraceland, yeah. Yeah, but so I hadn't been married to him yet, but then there was this girl that was like, there was all these cunty normal girls, you know, that were always around the rock and roll scene, like the boring people that would now be like Instagram influencer type girls. Yeah, they didn't have work done like in those days, but it was totally this kind.
Yeah.
Girl, you know what I mean? That was even like semi like pre full on punk rock. It was just like, fuck you.
I have to ask you guys, all of you, who, because I love gossip, who, like, in the punk scene have you met that you've absolutely hated?
I didn't like Steve Baders very much.
I could see that.
It's a sacrilege to say back in the day, I really did not like Henry Rollins at all.
Oh God, I still don't.
What's his story? He's so weird.
An asshole. Oh my God.
He's a misogynist.
Yeah.
You know, Pleasant, last night we have this other host named Zoe. She's a
I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry, we have this other host named Zoe, and we did we did a pre-thing last night. She couldn't make it today, but she works at a haunted place in Detroit.
Ooh.
So we started channeling Darby Crash, and to talk to you and to talk to me. And he said that he wants to be called Starby now.
Starby.
Starby. Starby to me.
And he said he had a crush on me because of my platforms, my glitter platforms, but he also had a crush on Pat Morrison from the Bags.
Oh, who didn't? Jesus.
That's what I said. Who didn't?
But he said he was quite happy, but yeah, it's going to be the 40th anniversary of his passing.
I know. He was like, you know how I met him and George, Pat Smear?
No.
I was George's first like real girlfriend. Okay, so I met them right when I first came to LA in 1975. I went to a Queen concert. Actually, I wrote about this story, but it wasn't like fully in John Doe's first book, Under the Big Black Sun.
Mm-hmm.
I took the bus down Wilshire to Santa Monica wearing like a tattered 1940s like evening gown and like silver glitter platform. Yeah, to the Santa Monica Civic to see Queen. And so I got to my seat and this is what I wrote in the book, but it was totally true. A hot older man turned around and said, "You want," and handed me a joint. And I took a puff off it, and I was like, "Wow, that guy's handsome." And then I realized I was smoking dope with Tony Curtis. I'd been in LA for like about a week or something. And I was coming from the East Coast, I was like, "Wow, this is like swimming pools and movie stars." So we were getting wasted, and then I see these two boys coming down the aisle, and one was shirtless and wearing black satin bell bottoms and had a long black cape, and the other one was all dressed in white with like orange Bowie mullet. Now we can call it a mullet. In those days, it was a Bowie shag, and a lightning bolt down the face, and I was just like I totally forgot that I was smoking dope with someone I'd seen in Spartacus or Some Like It Hot. You know what I mean? And I was like, "Do you have a pen I can borrow?" And I had a matchbook, and I wrote, "Aladdin saying, you cosmic orgasms, call me." And I put Saturn, some lightning bolts and shit on it. And right as the lights were going down, I threw it. And then the next day, both of them called me on my landline, and they were grabbing the phone from each other and stuff. So that's how I met George and Paul. But I have a really good, stupid story about Henry Rollins too. This is very short. So my band, the Ringling Sisters, that I had with Iris Berry, we used to put on these charity benefits every Christmas time. It was called the annual Ringling Sisters Fundraiser, and it went from 1985 onwards for 13 years. And like at the first one, Screamin' Jay Hawkins played. I mean,
oh wow,
we had Jim Carroll, we had Babes in Toyland. Oh. Sadly, one of them was the Gun Club's last show. I mean, it was always insane because we knew everybody, and it was all for the kids. And that's actually where K-Rock stole their acoustic Christmas from, because that was our show, was like all acoustic. Anyhow, so one time backstage, we always would have like a photo thing set up backstage so that people could just, that were backstage, could take pictures. And so the Ringling Sisters trademarks were, we always had tiaras. That was me and Iris Berry, because I was always the Princess of Hollywood, even before I was called that, even before my Instagram handle. But so we had tiaras, and we had a bunch of boas backstage so that anyone that took pictures with us could like dress like us, right? Wow. And so John Doe is there with like a red boa around his around. And Gene Simmons from Kiss, who donated $1,000 to like the orphanage and brought all these toys.
He's everywhere.
Down and stuff. So then fucking Henry Rollins walks up, and there's John Doe and Gene Simmons with crowns on, tiaras like sparkling and shit. And they're like, come on. And Henry Rollins was like, no. And they're like, yeah, it's fun, come on. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that.
So it's too cool.
That's so you talked about backstage. Can you describe Backstage Pass you describe our
Oh my God. Okay, so you guys were like, Backstage Pass was like, this was like I don't even know how to say it. It was like a super group of superhero girls who were always like, you guys had like a really good look. You even still look like it right now. Like you always had a look that was sort of like a really slutty, like Ronette's eye makeup kind of thing, combined with a schoolgirl, combined with like a slutty, sexy secretary. And then there was Spock, who had like the perfect bangs and like Spocky eyebrows, and everyone just looked gorgeous. And it was called Backstage Pass because that was a perfect name for a band of girls who were groupies. But also in the olden days, like I was talking about this with Pamela DeBar the other day, because we did
tell us about what did you do with Pamela?
Wait, I want to finish.
I'll tell you about that in a minute. So Backstage Pass, this was something that, like, with you guys, I'm just saying this for anyone that's listening, with you guys and with me and with some other people, I don't even know how, but we were always backstage. And we didn't have to really sneak there. People just let us, like,
Totally
wanted us to. I don't know why or how that happened, but like we never had to pull the "don't you know who I am" shit. Like it was always like everybody knew who we were, but we didn't have to, like, so or they didn't know who we were. They would just figure we needed to be there. So you guys were like a really great, like, proto, you know, what am I saying? I wanted to say protozoa, but that's too scientific. That's not what I meant. A prototype for girl groups, you know, because there wasn't, the Runaways were like the only ones going at that time, except for Fanny, who came a little bit before us. And I think Fanny was also groupies or considered groupies. And the Runaways, like, you know, Joan and I were like really good friends for ages. I used to cut school to go to their rehearsals at SAR and the Quick rehearse there. That was how I met the Quick. I mean, it was such an insular scene in those days, but for anybody that looks at old punk books, and this is for listeners, when you look at the original, like, 70s punk, it did not look like later on the punk that a lot of people think it is, when all the violence and the mosh pits and stuff started. The original punk, there was still people with like mustaches and afros and shags and hippie hair there. It was just like, it was like a wild movement of just, you didn't have to look a certain way. Some of us wanted to look like True Detective. Others of us wanted to look like Star Trek. Some of us just wore like a fucking like Pep Boys t-shirt and jeans. It did not matter. You know, and everyone was just there to have a good time. And I honestly think that punk was like that. It was the last, that 70s punk was like the last youth movement that was not co-opted by like anything major. No record companies, where it was sort of on their radar, but not even more until like the early to mid 80s. It just happened organically by itself. And, you know, like kind of like how the hippie movement did. And that shit's never gonna happen again. It's never gonna happen again. It was a really unique and wild time to be alive, you know?
It was, and it was so creative and so individual, and kind of you brought to it wherever you came from and whatever your background was, and then you just skewed it in this environment where you can play it out however you want it. And I remember, like, most of us never wore the same thing twice. You would like borrow stuff and go to the thrift store, and you would tear things and sew things and paint them and trade things and just show up, and it all worked and was so much fun. I just remember this thing of just trading clothes with people all the time.
Oh yeah, constantly. And then, like, one day you'd look like Rosie the Riveter, the next day you'd look like a, you know, like a pulp magazine pinup. I mean, or it was so nuts. And just the parties that happened then that were under the radar to LAPD. I mean, like, LAPD didn't catch on to like the house parties or the illegal clubs like the Mask for a pretty long time. I mean, once they did, it was kind of fucked up.
What did you wear at the punk fashion show, Pleasant?
I think I was wearing a black slip with my actual dog's chain around it, like his chain collar leash, you know what I mean? And you know what? And I had a bunch of cock rings from the pleasure chest on my and because we always used to wear cat collars and cock rings because there was no one making like studded wristbands or accessories in those days. So if you went to the pleasure chest, you could get a cock ring for like $2 or $3, I think, and that was expensive. But it had like cone-shaped spikes on it, and I used to have a bunch of cat collars. I always wore fishnets, and I always wore fishnets with garters because you could get garter belts and bullet bras at thrift stores for like $10.
Yeah.
And, oh, wait a minute. I mean, 10 cents. Sorry, $10.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and you could find Alice, and because also in the 70s, there was no such thing as, at that time, as like black lingerie. Everything was like either white, beige, baby blue, and if you were really daring, red. So I remember one time taking Speed. Well, not one time, that was constant, but they had just come out with like fine point, like magic markers, and I had a black one and a brown one, and I also had black and brown nail polish. And so I took all the Speed, and I spent all night coloring in leopard on a flesh colored bra so I could have a leopard bra because I hadn't been able to find one.
Oh my God.
And then I had a beige phone that said, it was the old Hollywood area code. It said HO, which meant Hollywood, you know. So, you know, and we weren't saying that word back then, but that did describe me at the time. But I took my nail polish, and when I was done with the bra, I carefully painted nail polish all over the phone in leopard spots. I wish I still had that phone.
Screamin'
amazing.
Sirens had a really cool androgynous look, the first line.
Who did?
The Screamin' Sirens.
Oh yeah, we were all like.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Genny, when Genny was in my band, the Screamin Sirens, at the very beginning, and we all had like sort of boys rockabilly haircuts, and some of us would dress like boys, like, or Teddy boys, and others like me would dress like Mamie Van Doren or something, you know. And but it was kind of like, now we'd be now that look would kind of be they them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was wild. And
Yes,
like,
you were really attracted to that when you saw that picture with Fur Dixon and Pleasant with the blonde.
Well, yeah, you know, being trans and seeing things like that back in the day. I mean, you know, during the glamour and all that, and some of it felt like really genuine. It was beautiful.
it was really genuine.
Yeah.
I mean, I myself was raised by drag queens. My mom had theaters,
Yeah.
so none of them, like at that point anyway, none of them were identifying as women, or you wouldn't even have said that because this was in like the way early, it was
Right,
in the 60s,
exactly.
in the 70s. But my babysitters all, and I'm still in touch with some of them. One of them runs like a really amazing like film online magazine called Bright Lights, and it's like one of the definitive film things. But he used to come to me when I was like 10. I mean, nowadays we'd say, oh, this is so inappropriate, but in those days it was amazing. He'd be like, he'd bring Andy Warhol's interview over and paint my toenails blue and be like, this is Candy Darling. Look at how beautiful she is. This is Jackie Curtis. Like, you know, and then like, you know, we would talk about Shakespearean plays where, you know, people were like switching clothes and genders, and I was already into Bowie, and he was too, and he taught me about 60s girls groups. And I mean, all like when I was growing up, me and my brothers and sisters were too insane to have like high school girls like babysit for us. So my mom was teaching at an all male college, and she started getting guys from the football team because they could handle us, because we were like fucking hooligans. But then it started morphing into her theater students. And I remember, instead of trying to punish us or, you know, like ground us or do something, some of the babysitters would be like, okay, if you be quiet, I have a show. And then they would just put on the Supremes and grab like sheets off the bed and make a dress and like put something on for a hat and come down the stairs to like stop in the name of love, like acting it out. So I was always like, we used to just call it like fluid, like gender fluid, or you know, sexual fluid sexual preference, but in those days of like the 70s, if you even said something like that, or people thought that, like all the dykes would just go like, oh, you just haven't met the right girl yet. Or, and then all the male gay guys would just go, oh, fish. You know what I mean? Most of them.
Yeah, I
You know?
remember that.
It was just so bizarre. And then that was also when people used to call like people that were having kids breeders. And I remember like, as a derogatory term. And then I remember when the first waves of like queer adoption started, I'd be like, now who's a fucking breeder, bitch? You know? I mean, maybe you didn't breed them, but you raising them, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what's wrong with children? You know, like.
Can you tell us about some of the projects you're doing now, Pleasant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Wait, I'm babbling nonstop because I just had like
I wanna hear about-
the strongest coffee you could ever imagine. Okay, so I do have a new book coming out really, really super soon. Wait, when is this going on the air, or are we live now? I don't even know.
Well, we want to broadcast before Bell Book and Candles, so we can.
Oh, okay. All right. So shortly after that, like in the beginning of November, mark your calendars. I have a book coming out called Rock and Roll Witch, and it's like my book, Showgirl Confidential, but it's all it's all my
There it is.
witchy, paranormal, synchronicity, just fucked up crazy stories. A lot of people, like when they've read my other books, like I remember one time agents were I was sending it out to agents, you're a great writer, but your characters are unbelievable and your plots are implausible. And I'm like, okay, because this is memoir. But so this is all memoir of crazy paranormal stories. And there are so many rock and roll and punk time stories. There's stories about Belinda from the Go-Go's. There's a lot of stories. There's like at least 5 stories with Kid Congo Powers in it. There's other stories with Lux and Ivy. There's a story about Alex Chilton. There's stuff with the Panther. I mean, it's a completely rock and roll book, but it's also a witchy book. And my favorite is the subtitle. It says, I can see it in lights. No, it's Rock and Roll Witch, a memoir of sex, magic, drugs, and rock and roll.
I love it.
These are the 3 cards I get for your book.
Oh, wait.
Ooh.
Okay, I can see the 2 of Pentacles, the Ace of Wands, and the Sun.
Yes.
Yay!
Yeah.
Woohoo! You want to tell people what that means?
Yeah.
Should I say it? Why don't you say it since that was what you
I
pulled?
feel like it's gonna, it's okay. I'm looking at the cards and I feel like it's really gonna be successful, like, you know, from here to eternity. No, like
Eternity, I was just gonna say
but also, no, it's just gonna be, you know, maybe at one point you'll be able to do like a book tour and go to be bi-coastal, go to New York or go across the pond. And just the Sun is just major success. And that, you know, this is wands are fire, so, and aces. So yeah, you got it. You got it going on.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be very successful.
Okay, so I'm going to tell people the date of this, but I don't know when. There's going to be a virtual party. I don't know what time yet, but I'll put all the time zones and all that on my website and on my Instagram and blah, blah. We're going to have the party for the book where people can pre-order it on 11/11 because that is my favorite number. And there's so much 11/11 shit in my book.
Wow.
That's my favorite number too.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11, 11, and 22.
Yeah. Wait, what else do I have that I'm working on right now? Hold on, I'm blanking out because there's a bunch of shit. Oh, somebody, Rock, Roll, Repeat just made t-shirts of me with an iconic, I'm saying iconic,
Your tongue.
70s picture. It's been in like so many punk rock books. It's me going like this. But I can roll my eyes up better than I can now. Because now I wear contacts and I'm a fucking like 61-year-old lady.
I ordered that T-shirt at Rock Roll and Repeat. So
Yeah.
it's such an iconic image of you that if you had a nickel for every time that's been printed, it would be like you'd be a millionaire probably.
Yeah, probably. I know that was so weird. And then okay, so how that came was that Josh, the guy, was like, he was trying to contact the photographer that had took it, who was in the UK, who never identified me in any of the photos because I literally just turned around and made that face when the camera was being. And so they're like, oh, well, the licensing fees are this and this and this. And Josh told me that. And I was like, fuck that. I haven't seen a goddamn dime for this in like 45 years. So then he just ordered the book and or a book and scanned the picture. And I was like, if that photo agent, like, you know, says anything about this, just refer them to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I will sue for like back royalties. Fuck you.
Is my T-shirt pleasant?
Oh my God, I love that.
Dave
It's a great
Damien
shirt.
signed it. And you remember Bob Biggs? Do you ever remember?
I heard that he just passed. I heard this last
Yeah.
night at like 1 a.m. What the fuck happened?
He was,
He's
Or we don't have.
he was always older than all of us.
yeah.
I know, but you know what? Everyone that was even like, I remember thinking that someone that was like 22 was really old.
Right.
I'm like, oh, but they're old.
I remember lying about my age when I was 22, and because I didn't want to cop to being that old. And I'm 19 or 20, you know, and then I pray people didn't know I was going to college, right? Because
He put out the first Germs EP, right?
No,
No?
Chris Ashford did. Chris Ashford.
Oh yeah, Darby also brought up El Duce.
Oh my God.
oh my God, yeah.
The guy from the Mentors?
Yes. The
Oh
guy
my
from
God.
the Mentors. He was so crazy. He really wants shit in a girl's purse at the Starwood. I'm not kidding. He was so crazy, and some of you guys might know of El Duce because supposedly like Courtney Love tried to get
Yeah.
hitman for Kurt Cobain's, but he was in this band called the Mentors, and oh my God, he was just insane. He looked like he'd be like a truck driver from Arkansas with like a fat beer belly and a stupid ass
Yeah.
mustache. But when he was in the Mentors, he'd wear like a hood, and actually they had a song called "Going Through Your Purse," but it should have been "Taking a Shit in Your Purse."
Shit in your purse.
I interviewed the remaining members and they are so respectful, which is so funny because you listen to their music and they are total chauvinist and they
Oh, yeah, I
they
mean-
say like the biggest shit, but like they have been so nice. It's just
Yeah,
so
it was
funny.
like, I'm sure it was, I mean, it was just like an act. Okay, so one time when I was booking Raji's, which was, no, this wasn't even Raji's, it was Cathay de Grand, which was owned by the same people, but preceded
We
it.
played there.
Yeah.
You
Anyway,
guys there, yeah.
so I'd be there in the daytime booking bands, but at night I was 86th because when I was in the Screamin Sirens, me and our drummer Boom Boom used to throw bottles against the walls and break them. And so we get 86 and I'd be like, you can't 86 me, I work here. And he's like, well, you're 86 after 7 o'clock. But anyway, one time it was in the daytime and I was booking bands and it was El Duce and Carlos Guitarlos from Top
Yeah.
Jimmy and the Rhythm
Carlos.
Pig. And they both called my downstairs booking office from the upstairs bar phone because they were like the cleanup crew at Cathay de Grand, and they're like, come on upstairs. And I was like, okay. And they're like, they were just behind the bar like making drinks, and they're like, we're gonna watch porn. And they had this old like fucking like TV set up on the bar and stuff. And they're like, do you want to watch it? I said, okay, I'll do it for a while. Do you want to drink? Sure. And then we were sitting there and they're like, can we tie you to the chair? And I just like, I knew them and I trusted them. I was like, sure, but if I want to get out, you have to let me go. And they said, okay. So then the owner walked in, Michael Brennan, like about an hour later, and I was like totally tied to the chair, and there was like some cocksucking video, like really bad and spanking on the TV, and they were like, one of them had like a drink to my mouth with a straw, and he looks and he does a double take, Michael, and he's like, "You guys just fucking untie," like, you know, he was like,
I think that should
he
be
was
your
like,
next
"Just another
bell
day in the office." Yeah.
That should be your next bell book and candle dance, Pleasant.
Yeah.
Hey, so Pleasant, I have a question for you. You know, you're obviously so sensitive to spirits and such. So way back in the day with all those places, you know, like the Mask, do you think the Mask was haunted?
I think the Mask was haunted, but more I felt crazier shit at the Canterbury Arms, and then what was it, the Garden Court Apartments on
Oh, the
Hollywood
Garden
Boulevard?
Court was so haunted. Oh my
Yes,
God.
it was insanely haunted. And I just wrote about for Rock and Roll Witch this story that happened to me at the Screamer's house,
Wilton
which was
Hilton.
the Wilton Hilton, and now it's like a bed and breakfast. But okay, so I'll just briefly describe their house. It was a 2-story craftsman. Tomato told me, but I don't know how much of this is true. I think some of it is, that it used to be the LA love nest for William Randolph Hearst and Marion Davies. And then it was dormitory style, like starlet housing for Paramount, which it's, you know, just right down the street. And then he said the GTOs lived there. And when I was talking to Miss Kamala the other night, I forgot to check on the address with her, but I need to call to verify if that's true, if Tomato just thought so. That was in the 60s. And then a little bit later in the 60s, there was apparently like a devil worshiping cult there, like a real cult, not like a coven. And the downstairs neighbors, there was a circle burned into the floor in Gear's room, which was a perfect circle. And so that made sense with the devil worshippers. And the downstairs neighbor's dog used to dig up cat skulls constantly from the backyard. And I actually wish I had one now. But anyhow, so one night I was there with Kid Congo and these 2 other guys that were very influential in the punk scene, but not in bands, Brad Dunning and Chuck Fulton. We were all watching Reflections in a Golden Eye on Movies Till Dawn. And it was like 2 in the morning or something, and Kid and Chuck decided to go and make Jiffy Pop in the kitchen, and then Brad and I were still in one of the rooms, like watching the movie, and all of a sudden there was this wispy smoke in the hallway, and we were all like fucking stunned. I mean, like, you know, so I was like, wow, maybe they're burning the Jiffy Pop. And then Brad saw the smoke get thicker, and he's like, we should see what they're doing. So we both got up and walked into the kitchen, and it was just barely beginning to pop. It hadn't even gotten to the point where smoke would be coming out of it. So we're like, what the fuck? And then the hallway was filled with this black, billowing, oily smoke. And it was coming from Gear's room. The door was open. And so I went in there. There was like 3 dormer windows that faced Wilton, those kind of craftsman sticky outy windows. They were all open. Okay. So the smoke was inside the room. I went over to I've got goosebumps all over my legs and my arms now. I walked over and I looked down on the street. There was nothing burning on the street. And so then Brad went in to check the closet and see if someone had left the candle on or something. There was nothing. This was all issuing from Gear's room out of nowhere. And then, so Brad got outside before I did because I was still with my head out the open windows. And he saw these 2 white cats that he thought were real until when they started going down the stairs, they just like dematerialized.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's that story in my new book, but with,
That's
you know.
actually where we shot me and the Screamers, and for the first episode, the first issue of Slash magazine, that's where we shot it.
Yeah.
Nissan. Yeah.
Yeah.
So much fun. What other new projects do you have coming?
God, why am I blanking out on this shit? I'm doing so much stuff right now. It's like total insanity. So, I mean, the book, Rock and Roll Witch, is the biggest one, and Bell Book and Candle on October 30th. But I'm also I'm starting a thing called True Smut, which is It's just this was named after it was named after like a illegal, now you would call it a fanzine, but my brother and I did when he was 8 and I was 10, and when he found a bunch of Playboys in the garbage, and we made what would be called a fanzine, but it was this big, and we sold it to kids on the playground. And because we think we weren't going to sell the Playboys, but we were like, those are so big, like,
Right.
you know.
Going to be any reissues of Screamin Sirens?
Oh, maybe. And I know what I'm doing. This is coming up soon. I'm just going to mention this for the first time. Jeff Drake from the Joneses. Do you remember that band, the Joneses?
I do, yeah.
Jeff Drake and I are recording a Loretta Lynn and Conway Twitty style country duet album.
Wow.
How fun.
Yeah. But also True Smut is not, it's not going to be like a fanzine. This is going to be a series I do with like a bunch of women that I know that I direct, and it's going to be made to look exactly perfectly like anytime between like the 20s and the early 60s, depending on what that one little video or photo session is. And I'm going to do all the directing and shooting. But it's going to have a voiceover by me in old Hollywood starlet diction school voice, like, they were on their way to the abortion clinic in Tijuana. Don't you see? You know, I mean, it's gonna, I mean,
And you also have a podcast.
I love
oh yeah, I forgot about that too. See how wasted I am on coffee.
You have a
I
podcast.
can't wait
Yes,
for
my
your
podcast is
session.
called The Devil's Music. It's got conversations that are similar to this, and that like everyone that's on it, like Belinda Carlisle or John Doe or Dana Gould or whoever, we're all just talking about fucking insane shit and swearing and like keeping it real in giant air quotes. So the Devil's Music is you can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. It's on Apple, it's on Stitcher, it's on Spotify, it's on Pandora, it's on iHeart, and you know, it's just all over the place. And
How about
I started
for
that
Elizabeth?
this year. What?
Elizabeth, for Elizabeth, for Metal Priestesses podcast,
Yeah.
where can we be
Oh.
heard?
Yeah. No, all of those places. We're on all
Yeah.
of those.
I love that. I have no idea how that goes. I don't have anything to do with that part of it. I just talk.
Because you put it on one and it links to all the others.
Oh yeah, see, I think, you know, I do magic, but when I look at someone doing a Photoshop thing, I was like, oh, this is, I get like, I was like, wow, how did you do that?
Thank you so much for talking to
Yeah,
us today.
absolutely.
I love you so much, Pleasant. I
love you
Hey,
too.
I have one more question before we go. Sorry.
Right.
I want to find out, being like such a horrible amateur belly dancer myself, like, are you doing any belly dancing during this crazy pandemic?
Well, I didn't do some for a while because in early May, I did an online show and I didn't feel it at the time, but the next morning I had dislocated my sacroiliac, which happens all the time because I'm double jointed, but I also ripped a hip flexor tendon and my hamstring on the right side. So I just started at the beginning of September. I had like 3 months of no dancing, but I do have some, I have some belly dance workshops coming up. So if you go to Instagram, which is at Princess of Hollywood, all one word, there'll be a Nats there. And also on Facebook, it's Pleasant Gehman. Twitter, it's Pleasant Gehman 1. And I will let you know where they are. Here, I'll just show you guys.
Wow, look at that.
Oh my
Girl,
God.
Ooh.
wow. So your belly
Wow.
looks
Look
animated.
at her.
And then you teach tarot. We're
Yes,
both
I do.
tarot.
I don't have any upcoming tarot classes coming up. Oh, I do have. I am gonna do a Samhain and Blue Moon tarot special. So also, these are email readings that I usually do on the full moon. This one is going to be on Samhain, Halloween. On the actual full blue moon. So it's going to be a little bit more than normal because hashtag I'm sacrificing my New Year's Eve. And and it's like a really special magical date. So I don't, it'll probably be about 50 or 60 bucks. I haven't figured that out yet. But they're email tarot readings with photographs done right on the night, like at the time.
Yeah,
So.
the veil will be very thin then.
Oh my God, it's already so goddamn thin. It's already been seen for ages through all of pandemic. It's gonna be nuts. This like in 2 weeks, it's just gonna be like.
Oh my God.
We're gonna look like an animation in Casper when everything is see-through.
Where do you take your walks when you take your pandemic walks?
I like to I go way up in the Hollywood Hills and I go all around like the historical parts of Hollywood, meaning like all the streets that are either cultural, you know, historic preservation zones. And sometimes I go down to other areas. I took a walk down Hollywood Boulevard at night once a few months ago. It was the first time I had ever been out at night in the pandemic, and it was eerie. It looked like a movie set. It was so deserted. None of the neon was on. But also I wouldn't recommend anybody walking around at night after pandemic because I mean there was no traffic, so that meant like no police around it. It was really weird. But now is a good time for everybody to walk, you know.
You go to the cemetery, Hollywood Forever?
Oh, I go there all the time. I live right near it. I love to go to Hollywood Cemetery. That's my happy place. And actually now it's called Hollywood Forever, but I keep thinking of it as Hollywood Cemetery. Want me to tell you one last little story before we go?
Yes.
Okay. This is so desecration-y behavior, but in the days I thought it was like really honorary. I used to like actually sometimes sleep over at Hollywood Cemetery with my leopard sleeping bag in the 70s. I'm not kidding. I always slept on the island. And one time they brought this really cute goth looking boy, even though we weren't really calling it goth at the time. I don't even know if it was called death rock, but I just put goth when I was writing this story up because people know what that is. So I picked this guy up. I don't even think I ever knew his name. We went to Hollywood Cemetery, and then I was showing him all the graves, and then we decided to have sex on Mel Blanc's grave, which, by the way, it says "That's all, folks" on it. So at the at the conclusion of the act, we were just sort of laying there, and he just looked at me and went, "Yeah, that's all, folks." And I thought, oh no, he said, "Yeah, what's up, Doc?" And I was like, wow, this is like husband material. But then I never talked to him. I never even saw him again.
That's so funny.
Did you throw up?
What?
Did I throw up?
Barf?
No. What do you mean? That? Oh, I have thrown up during sex, but not on that occasion. I threw up Cherry Garcia on someone's dick while I was giving a blowjob. Cherry Garcia ice cream. Wait, while I was on the phone with someone else.
Oh my God.
My phone, talking to someone.
And on that note,
There we go.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Bud.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pleasant.
You're so welcome. It was my
Love you.
pleasure. Mwah.
Mwah. We love you.
Love you.
Happy
Bye.
Halloween.
Bye.
Bye
Happy
bye.
Halloween.
You
Mwah.
Okay.
too. Happy New Year.